In this video, I'll be sharing the most important things that you need to know before visiting the 5th smallest country in the entire world, San Marino. In case you're new here, hi, I'm Christina from happytowonder.com. And this channel is all about practical travel tips from someone who's been there, done that. So be sure to like and subscribe if that sounds like your kind of thing. Now let's start with some basic San Marino must-knows. First off, let's tackle the location and how to get there. The Republic of San Marino, or as it's also known, the most serene Republic of San Marino, is a very unique country in that it's a micronation that's completely landlocked and surrounded on all sides by Italy. You can find it about 20 kilometers away from Rimini, and there's really no way for an overseas visitor to come and visit without first going through Italy. Well, once upon a time, there actually was a train route between Rimini and San Marino that was unfortunately destroyed during World War II. So these days, the only option for visitors to get to San Marino is either by renting a car, taking a taxi, or the most cost-effective option, grabbing a shuttle bus from Rimini. We personally took the shuttle this time around, and it only took 50 minutes and was very inexpensive. So that's definitely the option that I would recommend to tourists. Now, in terms of other basics, the currency they use here is the euro. The official language is Italian, although some people speak Romagnol as well. And residents here are known as the San Marinese, and you'd also use that as an adjective to describe things that are from San Marino. So San Marinese wine, for instance, or San Marinese cuisine. And the capital city of San Marino is the city of San Marino, also confusingly known simply as San Marino. Or sometimes just the città, which is Italian for city. This capital is actually located on the top of Mount Titano and is a very impressive medieval walled city that has an epic fortress on top and is overall just something straight out of a fantasy novel. So unsurprisingly, the capital is the tourism hub of San Marino and is most likely the place where you're going to be spending most of your time when you visit. Now for the rest of my video, most of the tips do revolve around the city of San Marino because that's where most visitors will be going. So let me know in the comments if you feel like I've missed any tips in regards to visiting other parts of the country. Now next up, another thing you should know is that when you're going to San Marino, you actually don't need to be worrying about passport control. Because although San Marino is not part of the EU or part of the Schengen area, there is actually a free border between them and Italy. So you're not going to need to show your passport when you enter the country. That said, to enter San Marino, you do supposedly still need a valid passport, so don't just leave your passport back at your hotel in Italy. Make sure you also bring it with you just in case. One of the things you can actually do once you get up there if you are interested in passport stamps is you can stop by the local tourism office, and from there they'll actually stamp your passport with a souvenir stamp for €5. That said, I should warn you, some people do say that doing so will invalidate your passport. I personally haven't had this happen. I've had souvenir stamps in the past, but there are enough stories out there anecdotally that people have been turned away from certain airlines or certain countries because they've had a weird souvenir stamp in their passport that people didn't trust. So just keep that in mind before you pay the €5 to get the stamp. And while San Marino is most commonly treated as a day trip destination for people who are already in Italy, something that I highly encourage you do is actually spend the night. I personally spent 2 nights, and for me that was the perfect amount of time. And the reason I say that is really because San Marino is small and compact, but at the same time, it is such a beautiful country. There's a lot of really interesting historical sites. And also, it's just so much more magical early in the morning and later in the evening after all the day trippers have left. It really feels like a completely different place, and I promise you, you will enjoy it so much more if you have that experience of just staying there for a night or two. And hotels here can be pretty affordable. I personally booked quite last minute, but I stayed at Hotel Rosa, which had very reasonable rates and also some of the best views from their breakfast tables. So I can highly recommend staying there. It's right in the old city, and it is a bit of a trek to get to, but the views there are spectacular. I should note that there are also more hotels closer to the base of the hill at the bottom of the city that are usually a bit more affordable, but personally, I think it's way more magical to actually wake up in the old city walls. So definitely weigh those pros and cons, but I think the higher up you can get to stay, the better. As another bonus, those who stay overnight in San Marino actually get something for free called a Tutto San Marino card. And this card will give you discounted rates at most San Marino attractions, including 50% off all the private museums and also a few euros off of the museum pass. And you'll also get 10% off at certain shops. So yes, definitely keep that in mind. Finally, I would really recommend you learn a bit more about the history of San Marino in advance of your visit, because honestly, this country is so interesting, and getting some of that foundational context is really key, because while the country is super beautiful and a total fairy tale come to life, this is actually, as they say, the oldest surviving republic in the entire world. And it's also a country that somehow managed to maintain its independence all throughout these years when there has been so much turmoil kind of just going on around it. And so learning about how San Marino was able to retain this independence throughout the years is super interesting and will really make the destination a lot more interesting as well when you have that context. Fun fact, Abraham Lincoln actually has honorary citizenship in San Marino, even though he never went there. So these are the kinds of interesting fun facts that you'll learn when researching. I definitely recommend it, although I acknowledge that I am a bit more of a history nerd than the average traveler. So if you're also like that, be sure to let me know in the comments and comment history so that I know I'm not alone. All right, now let's move on to some transport tips for San Marino and tips for getting around. First, as I mentioned before, the best way to get to San Marino is through the shuttle bus from Rimini. These days, you can easily get tickets online or in person at the local tobacco shop, which is what we did because we thought that was the only option. But if you are doing that, make sure you have cash on you, because when we visited, they didn't accept card. Overall though, I'd say buying them online is way easier, and that way you can actually have a look at the schedule as well in advance. The bus stop that you'll need is actually located right in front of the Napoleon Hotel, which is a short walk from the train station, so be sure to keep that in mind and know to look out for that hotel when you're looking for the bus stop, because it's not super obvious. When deciding where to disembark though, you have two main options. You can either ride the bus to the very last stop, or you can get off one stop earlier and actually take the cable car the rest of the way up, which costs €3. If you're looking for the option that involves the least uphill walking, I'd probably go for the cable car. During our visit, our bus actually had to drop us off at the bottom of that hill, and so in the end, we had to do so much uphill walking with our suitcases just to get to our hotel, which was very sweaty and not very fun. So I'd highly advise against doing that at all costs. I also saw a cute sightseeing train as well during my visit, so I'll be sure to link the details to that down in the description. Now, once you're in the city of San Marino, by far the best way to get around is just on foot. The city is super compact, it's got a lot of cobbled streets, it's super beautiful, and honestly, I think driving there would be a bit of a nightmare just because there's so many pedestrians and the roads are built in a very, very narrow way. So yes, definitely plan to do quite a bit of walking, and consider the fact that there is a lot of uphill and downhill because, again, the city is built on a mountain, so you'll want to make sure you have comfortable shoes that are able to grip well onto cobblestones. On that note, another important tip is to not just rely on Google Maps. So I don't know if it was just bad luck or bad service on my part, but what I personally noticed was that Google Maps can have a bit of difficulty in the city of San Marino just because there's a lot of different layers to the streets. You know, it can't always tell which part of the mountain you're on, so it has some difficulty distinguishing which street you're on because there's a lot of zigzaggy streets. So as hard as I know it can be, do try to navigate yourself. Be sure to take note of different landmarks and kind of navigate that way rather than be completely reliant on Google Maps, because sometimes that little blue dot can freak out a little bit and it's not a good time. Finally, if you are taking the bus back to Rimini as well, do try to arrive at the bus stop way earlier than you need to, just because our bus actually left a few minutes early and it was mostly empty, so there's really no reason that should have happened. And also during peak times, you want to make sure you have a seat, because with your ticket, seats aren't guaranteed. I have read that they allow standing room on this bus, and you know, it's only 50 minutes, but still you don't want to be standing the whole time. So I would definitely recommend getting there a little bit in advance to make sure that you don't get left behind, and you also secure your best chance at a seat. All right, now let's move on to tips for once you arrive in San Marino. The first is to remember to bring a water bottle. So this is especially important when you're visiting in the summer because, again, it gets really hot, you are walking uphill, downhill all the time, and it's easy to get dehydrated. The good news is there's actually a lot of free water fountains scattered around the city, so it's very easy for you to just fill up and get some nice, cold, refreshing water for free. So just remember to bring a bottle. Next, I do highly recommend you get the San Marino Multi-Museum Pass if you're planning on doing any sightseeing. If you plan on doing a lot of paid attractions, this does work out to be a really solid deal, and you can actually buy it online, or if you're staying overnight, I'd recommend you actually wait until you get there in person, because after you get that Tutto San Marino card from your accommodation, then you get a discount of a few euros. So during my visit, I actually only paid €8 for this entire museum card that included all the state-run attractions. So in the end, it was definitely really worth it. That said, if you do have a short time in San Marino, I wouldn't necessarily prioritize all the state-run museums because to me, again, the main draws are the views and the landscapes, and the museums like the National Museum are pretty good but aren't necessarily the most exciting things to do when you're in that city. I will say though, the Three Towers, which is included in the card, is definitely worth visiting. On that note, if you are visiting any big attractions like the Three Towers, do try to time your visit for early in the morning as soon as they open. That's just because A, these are the busiest tourist attractions in the entire country, so if you want to avoid the crowds, then you definitely want to get there early. And also, if you're visiting in the summer, it can get so hot up there just because you're going to be doing so much walking, just like up and down towers, constant stairs, so definitely time your visit for earlier so that you're not just like sweating the entire time. Another thing to take note of is that there is actually a shocking amount of private museums in San Marino as well, with super niche topics ranging from medieval torture to werewolves and vampires. Honestly, I wouldn't prioritize these just because, as I've said before, the landscapes and natural beauty and history are really what makes San Marino special. But, you know, if you're especially interested in vampires or torture, then do know that those are options. Otherwise, definitely give them a quick Google to read the reviews before you get duped into paying for any of these museums. Another bit of a random niche tip, definitely do not wear a dress when you visit San Marino. There are quite a few attractions that are not dress friendly, especially at a few of the towers where there's like ladders that you have to climb up to get to the next levels. And I learned this the hard way that if you wear a dress, people will see everything. So definitely don't be wearing a dress during your visit. Of course, beyond the museums and paid attractions, I do really think that San Marino has a number of great free attractions to offer as well, so if you're short on time, I would probably prioritize those. Besides all the amazing viewpoints all around, you can also visit the Palazzo Pubblico, which is kind of the main city hall building in the city of San Marino. They have really great views here, and you can also actually see the inside for free and even see the chamber of the Grand and General Council, which is really beautiful, you know, assuming they're not actively using it. Though do keep in mind this is an active government building and don't accidentally try to walk into a meeting like my boyfriend did. The Basilica of San Marino is also worth a look, as is the Crossbowman's Quarry. So this can actually be found right below one of the main viewpoints, kind of close to where the cable car lets people out. And it's honestly a very unique place, especially if you're able to catch it when there is a crossbowman practicing, which I did, and it was very cool, but actually kind of scary as well, because, you know, when you're just a tourist sightseeing, taking pictures of the mountains, the last thing you're expecting to hear is the sound of a whooshing crossbow. And that is something that you can experience in San Marino. And this is some more general advice, but before you sit down to eat anywhere, I would highly recommend hopping on Google Maps just to read a few reviews. And that's because San Marino is, again, a very popular day trip destination. So especially in very touristy areas, like around the cable car, for instance, there are going to be quite a few cafes and places that cater more to tourists and don't really have the best value for money. So definitely give reviews a quick read before you sit down just to avoid getting tourist trapped. There were some places we really enjoyed eating at, so I'll link those in the description. I would also highly recommend you make reservations for restaurants as well, just because the city is very compact and quite small, so there's not a ton of restaurant options in terms of places where you can have a nice sit-down meal. So if you're looking for a place that's well reviewed, it's probably going to be quite popular. So be sure to make reservations in advance or kind of time your meals for off-peak times. Like in Italy, they tend to eat a little bit later, so if you go at 5 or 6 o'clock, assuming they're open, there probably won't be as much of a crowd as later. Likewise for if you go after the dinner rush, maybe around 8 or 9 o'clock. Now on the shopping front, I think a lot of people get very excited about shopping in San Marino because it is, of course, tax-free, but I personally didn't notice a ton of shops that had a lot of nice goods where you could browse for a long time. There were a lot of kind of weird all-purpose shops that had everything from fake perfumes to nerdy paraphernalia to airsoft guns and random souvenirs. Like there were a bunch of shops that just sold a bit of everything, which I thought was really odd. So if you are planning on shopping in San Marino, do know that in the city, there's not a ton of great shops where you can do that. But if you're into luxury shopping, perhaps there is actually the San Marino outlet, which is just over the border when you're coming from Rimini. And there they do have a handful of luxury shops where you can potentially browse. And that might just be better for shopping purposes compared to some of the admittedly quite weird shops that you can find up in the capital. And I should also say, don't forget to mail a postcard when you're in San Marino. The postal system there is actually over 400 years old, and so it's a very unique souvenir to just grab a postcard, grab a San Marino stamp, and mail it to loved ones back home, because that's quite a unique honor from one of the world's smallest countries. And if you're especially nerdy about stamps, there actually is a museum that's dedicated to stamps and coins, which I personally found very interesting. But again, museums shouldn't necessarily be your main priority when you come here. And on that note, don't forget to take some time during your visit to just kind of walk around, explore a little bit, maybe get a bit off the beaten path. Because honestly, the tourist attractions in the city of San Marino are very interesting, but there were so many cool hidden walkways and paths that we followed and different hiking trails that were so peaceful. And those to me are some of the things that I remember most from this trip. So I definitely recommend kind of choosing your own adventure, finding some more offbeat places to go explore. You definitely won't regret it. All right, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more travel videos just like this one, and I'll see you next time.